What do you do when you need bread quick? You cheat. I'm going to show you 3 tricks to cut my baking time in half, or almost in half. First, add 1 cup of warm water, 1 egg, and in this bowl, I have 2 tablespoons of sugar, 1 tablespoon of yeast, 1 tablespoon of chia seeds, 1½ teaspoons of salt, 1 tablespoon of flax, 1 teaspoon of psyllium husk, and I'm going to mix all that together. I'm making spelt bread today, and that's one reason I'm adding the chia, flax, and psyllium husk. You can still add this to regular white bread if you'd like. Also, I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of butter. And I just kind of smush that around a little bit. Yeah, I made my soup today, and it's gotten late, and I just realized I don't have any bread to eat with my soup. And I love to have a slice of bread with butter with my soup. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and add 1 cup of spelt flour. Go ahead and add my 2nd cup of flour. Spelt is an ancient grain that I started using about a year ago exclusively. And I used to be gluten-free, and I find that by using the spelt flour, my system tolerates it a lot better. So that's why I use spelt. And I've been converting my recipes over to spelt because it is a little bit different to cook with. And so that's why I have the addition of the egg also in my bread, because it does help it to stay together and stay light and fluffy. I should have just added a little bit of spelt flour that time. Hopefully that was my 3rd cup. You know, I lose count sometimes, but it's mixing up good, so it must have been the 3rd cup. This is my last ½ cup that I'm gonna put in there, and I'm gonna go ahead and start kneading it. That is the bad thing about making homemade bread, is you do have to plan ahead, because you do have the rise times and the mixing time and everything. So you do have to plan ahead a little bit, but sometimes you can kind of skirt by. So I've added 3½ cups of flour in total. I want my bread kneaded very well for this little trick that I'm doing, because normally with my bread, I don't knead it a whole lot. Whenever it's rising, the gluten starts forming really good, and you know, so I just don't knead my bread a whole lot. But for this trick, I want it kneaded pretty good. It's feeling a little bit sticky. I want it kneaded pretty good, and I want the gluten to really start forming before I let it rise. And spelt does have gluten, obviously, but the gluten seems to be tolerated a lot better by people that are gluten sensitive, because it is an old ancient grain that has not been changed and modified as much. Okay, now I'm liking the way my dough is. It's got a nice little bounce to it. So here is my first cheat. Normally I would cover this bowl with saran wrap and let it rise till it doubles. But I don't have time today, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to put it in my pan. I'm going to shape it a little bit, and I'm going to set it in my pan, and I'm going to let it rise till it just about doubles in size. So my first trick is that we're not doing 2 rises. We're doing 1 rise. The second trick, we're going to let it rise in a warm oven to help speed up that rise. Stay tuned for trick number 3. Okay, the bread has been rising for about 30 minutes, and I'm going to pull it out and show it to you, but I'm going to put it right back in the oven. All right, you see it has risen up and it has filled up most of the pan. So I'm going to put it back in the oven, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it on 350 and bake it for about 40 minutes. So you notice my bread had not fully risen. That's okay because it will rise up more in the oven. And I did not preheat my oven. I just turned my oven on 350. It'll gradually heat up and that bread will gradually rise a little bit more. I probably won't get the same rise as I would if I would have done a double rise, but that's okay. I'm gonna have bread with supper and I'll have it in about an hour and 15 minutes instead of about 2 hours and a half.
40 minutes later.
And see, it's not risen real tall, and because it didn't have 2 risings. I always like to put butter on my bread when it first comes out the oven, and then I like to go ahead and dump my bread out where it doesn't sweat on the bottom. There's advantages and disadvantages to doing the bread the way I did it today by doing a quick rise in the oven, only doing 1 rise. The disadvantages is that you may have a little bit packier loaf. The advantages are you get bread quicker, but it was worth it to me where I can have bread with my supper. And I'm doing another no-no right now. I'm cutting bread while it's hot still. I mean, I just dumped it out of the pan. I'm being very gentle. The reason you don't cut bread while it's hot is because it can make it kind of compress down. But like I said, my soup is ready and we're ready to have our soup with some bread, or our bread with some soup. What tricks do you use in your baking? Let us know in the comments below. Check out our cinnamon roll video next. It's linked down in the description below.